make a choice. All right, everybody. Hey, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and Carrying Stones and Digging Holes weekly online class. We're having the class live. You can see it live, or you can find it on Patreon, my Patreon, or you know, if you're lucky enough to get that free link, we'll be putting it some other places as well. Anyway, I have Dr. Lenny Thyme with me, and this hour is just kind of about basics in water, like, you know, foraging, prepping, understanding, you know, water that's out there in the world, some ideas. We have a lot of links to share along with it. So make sure wherever you find it, look for the links, because the links will be with the actual class. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is the free PDF. So I have a free, let me look here. I hunted down a free PDF. Let me go over here for a second. And I just want to tell people where that's at. So the free PDF of When Technology Fails, which is a colleague of ours, a person that both Lenny and I know. We're at his first workshop that he did on this book, When Technology Fails, that's written by Matt Stein. Matt Stein passed away a couple of years ago. But the free PDF is at projectavalon.net/resources/When Technology Fails, Matthew Stein, a manual of or self-reliance and planetary survival PDF. So look for that link.
People will click the link.
Yeah, so in case you don't, you know, anyway. All right, so the other thing too is that I'm going to actually be putting a few links on with the video once I upload it that have to do with going out, DIY, do it yourself, and how to actually accumulate water in nature, how to dig water, how to find water. That's, you know, massive survival. And if we think about like the 3 stages that Matt Stein, you know, talks about, one is a home system. How are you going to get water into your home? You know, how are you going to, you know, clean it and filter it and all these things, which we're going to discuss as well. And then there's the second one in your car. You know, something's happened in your area and you realize, like, being at where you're at in your home is no longer safe. So you have, you know, survival stuff in your car. So you've got, you know, maybe bigger water purifiers that can purify water faster. And then there's the third stage, which he called the bug out. And you have a backpack that has, you know, some survival items, including smaller water purification. And when we get to the purification section, we're going to talk to Dr. Lenny about making one from scratch from nature that we're in. So let's talk about, with section 1, let's talk about where the water is, thoughts of how you're going to get that water, and what will, you know, how much water you're going to get back and how you're going to transport that back. So dealing with, this is an issue in 2010 that I started thinking about. This was actually before I met Matt Stein, and really started thinking about what's going to be coming down the pike in the future, and really thinking about water. And I actually walked most of the Truckee River over about a year period. So if there was going to be water that I was going to get here in the Reno area in the desert, it would be in the Truckee River. Right now, currently, I'm about 8 miles away from the Truckee River. So if I don't have water coming up in my sink, I'm going to have to go out and I'm going to have to source water. So what can you do to go out and find out where you might have water? Also, a really big important thing is, you know, how are you going to collect it? And how are you going to purify it, right? So you could take a big, you know, 5-gallon clean bucket or dirty bucket, doesn't even matter, because the water is going to be mostly contaminated. There is, you know, 4 blocks away from where I'm at currently, a pond, a man-made pond that's called Virginia Lake. and it has tons of birds, right? So it has bird pucky, fecal matter in it, bacteria. It's not really aerated. It's a place that is filled by storm water drains, you know, when it rains or it snows, anything extra. In the summer, it can be pretty nasty, really nasty, because there's nothing actually coming into it. So you have to take this into consideration about drinking that water, because you never want to drink that water the way that it is, because it's called, you will have to go to the hospital. And if you can't get to a hospital, you will die, because you will have, you know, vomiting, parasites, bacteria, diarrhea, a whole host of things, fever, that will contribute to the water that you're drinking. Do you have anything to add to going out and looking for the water? Because I know where you're at. You recently have been out looking yourself.
I live right off a golf course that has water hazards. And so there is a series of canals that runs through the apartment complex. So it's not that I can't get to water fairly easily, but there are birds in the water. I've seen cranes and storks and ducks. And it's kind of fun to talk with the birds as I'm taking walks outside. Um, Definitely would not drink the water that the birds are lounging in, but it's easy enough to make a sand filter. And if you put in charcoal, you're going to get 98% of everything out in either the sand or the charcoal. So there are definitely easy ways of purifying water to get it good enough to drink. If you don't need it to drinking water quality, you can use lesser quality water to wash dishes or those sort of things. But the systems that we have that deliver municipal water put a residual of chlorine in the water so that when it comes out of your tap, there's still a little bit of chlorine that tells you that everything's disinfected. That isn't going to be something that's available if the municipal water systems go down.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the municipal water systems are, you know, taken from the rivers and other places that, you know, there's a lot of homeless living on. I know with the Truckee River coming out of Lake Tahoe, you know, it's fairly pure, but then it hits Truckee, and Truckee dumps their sewage, whether it's kind of reclamated sewage, still has sewage in it. And then it comes down into Verdi. They dump raw sewage into the Truckee River. Reno and Sparks dump all their sort of reclamated sewage with their perfumes and chemicals added to it to make it smell nice into the river every day. So as you're going along this waterway down to Pyramid Lake, you know, you can see toilet paper, you can see things that are floating around, and people don't realize this is a serious issue. And the other thing too is that there's all kinds of medications in the water as well, that go out through, you know, the urinary tract and the fecal tract, and then those medicines, you know, even you know, stuff that actually blocks the blood clotting, which, you know, are varieties of rat poison that a lot of people that have heart conditions take, Coumadin and some of these other things. And so, you know, you drinking the water and you have all these different people that maybe are taking Coumadin, and that stuff's also in the water, you know, can make you have more of an injury rate, bruising, could even have, you know, hemophilia, where you actually, you know, bleed out, or you can't heal your body because your body is not clotting that wound or sore. So
It's
it's really
important to be able to do some water quality monitoring to check that you have a good pH, to check that your turbidity is low and that you can actually see through the water. It's not cloudy. You can do tests for fecal matter and other biologics, but for the most part, most of the water testing is beyond an individual's scope unless they've got specialty equipment. So pretty much what you're doing is you're counting on the ability of what you're purifying the water through to be valid to get stuff out of your water. And if it doesn't take 100% of everything out, at least it's getting most of the icky stuff and all of the dissolved solids.
Yeah, and you could also boil it. So you know, even if you don't have electricity, you can get yourself a solar oven. You know, you could put that in your prepping, so that way you can just open it up to the sunlight, put a pot in there, boil it on your stove. There are going to be some links that I'm going to share on making home distill devices, and outside and inside, depending on where you're going to be at in your prepping and your survival mode. Remember, because we're in our
Yeah,
house, then
it
we
used
might
to
be in the
be that
car.
you could put out a bucket and just collect the rainwater. Nowadays with the chemtrails, I'm not sure I trust the rainwater to just drink it straight, but having the containers out to collect water when it rains is probably a pretty good way of getting water, at least in the short term.
Yeah, and like I said, I have a lot of links that I'll be posting that there's all different kinds of purifiers, and also there's going to be some links for the actual water harvesting from your house that you can do, and the filters that go along with that. So all the water is good. Obviously, if you're going to be needing to grow food in your yard, you're going to probably want to water harvest, and you might want to get those things now, so that you know when this, you know, when lightning strikes, and you're going to need it and you don't have it, and it's an afterthought, it's going to be a little complicated. Also too, there are some links on different distilled last summer, so that I could actually distill hydrosols, which, you know, you take plant mass. It's where essential oils come from, but you do the hydrosol, and then it has a little collection area for the oil. And usually one pot of plant material is only going to give you like maybe about 5 drops of essential oil that it's going to actually pull out. But the water that's in it that has been distilled is what we call hydrosol, which is super awesome. It's drinkable. You can use it for cleaning, but it's a pot that actually distills all that. So I have this killer pot that's steel. You got to be careful about distilling equipment, because you don't want to buy equipment that actually is going to cause heavy metal poisoning. And so you want something that's steel, stainless steel, and, you know, with the copper components that go along with it, to make sure that you are not going to get heavy metal poisoning. There are a lot of distilling things that you can buy. Some you can plug into the wall. Pots that you can get. The pot that I have is like, you know, not very big. I have a link for that. And I could actually put it on a wood fire. I could actually put it on a camp stove, in order to distill water if I needed to distill water. The other thing about distilled water is that when you drink it, it's going to be a lot better than the caca stuff that you're going to be drinking that, you know, is probably going to kill you. But long term, distilled water will actually have to pull nutrient out of the body, in order to make itself whole, in order to actually be processed. So I have some links for distilled water that are mineral additives. So those are kind of some things that you might want to think about getting, so that you have minerals to put into your distilled
You don't get
water.
very much minerals from your distilled water. You get minerals from your food. So if you eat organically and you grow good nutritional food, the amount of distilled water you drink is incidental.
Well,
But
but we're talking about survival, where people are probably not eating nutrient dense food. Yeah, so I mean, if you have a healthy lifestyle and healthy diet, distilled water should never be a problem. But if that's all you have, and you're not eating anything, and you're going, you know, days without actually eating anything, then you may have some actual issues with the distilled water. So, you know, how ideas on, you know, like, how do you think that you would collect the water that you see outside? Like, what would be the process? So you've gone out and sourced it, you know where it's at, and then how would you go out and collect it if, say, your water fell apart and you had to go out there and get it?
if it's easy enough, I just take a bucket or a bottle and fill up the bottle. And I would make myself a sand filter in a pop bottle or something, an upside down milk jug or something like that. in which case I'd put some rocks on the bottom or pebbles that water could get through, but the sand couldn't. Then I'd put in a layer of sand. Then I'd put in a layer of charcoal, although not the charcoal briquettes that you buy in the market. Those have all sorts of additives in them. What I'd do is I'd take the charcoal out of a fire that I had recently. And if you live outdoors and spend time outdoors and have a fire pit that you work with, it's a great source of charcoal and biochar if you quench the fire with water before it burns all the way down. And then I'd put another layer of sand on top of the charcoal, and then maybe another layer of rocks on top of the sand. So I have about 3 or 4 inch column of material that provides the filtration.
Yeah, so there are, like at Whole Foods, I've noticed that they do have, right now, probably not going to have it in the future, but they do have our organic charcoal, right? That are actually wood pieces that, have our biochar that you could get, and you could actually, you could actually stockpile for your prepper, your home prepper, right? Kind of a
Talk
thing.
about the life straw, because that's a pretty good device
It
that you
is, and
can have water in any condition and it'll take out almost everything.
yeah, well, and they use it for third world countries, so like the worst parasitic waters on earth. I mean, Africa has some of the worst parasitic waters. I've heard that you could be standing in the water, like in the Nile, and actually have parasites go in through your skin, and kind of live in your body. So the parasitic, some waterways just have so many different bacteria and parasites. But the life straw, you can actually, put it to your lips and put it onto the water and actually suck it in. Hold on one second. I actually have one.
Okay. Yeah, the life straw is a commercial device that somebody invented. And so you can order one online. Bridgette will show you. It's not very big, maybe a foot long. I would not go right into the water and suck it right through. I'd collect the water in a container and then take the water from the container and drink it.
Yeah, so here's the life straw. And you would put your lip on here. So you never want to put that in the dirty water because it will contaminate it. And then it has the bottom part that you open, and see, it has all the filtration in it. And so you stick it in the water and basically, drink it out. Even has like a nice little thing you can carry it around your neck. And I actually have a link that I'm going to be adding to the videos. And Life Straw now has a bag. So you can go collect, instead of, sticking this directly in the water and going for it. You can get the bag that goes along with it. So you go scoop up the water with the bag, has a sling on it. You carry it back to camp or house or whatever. And then you put your life straw on it and you filter it out into a jug or a glass or a can.
We should probably remind the viewers that a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. And so
yeah, that's collection.
Significant weight towards moving water from one place to another. So be aware that if you can carry 25 pounds, that's 3 gallons of water. You can get a nice blue carboy that holds 3 gallons. If you want to get 5-gallon carboy, that's going to weigh 40 pounds when it's filled. But you should have some containers on hand that can hold gallons of water, both clean and dirty, because once you've taken the time to purify water, you don't want to put it back in a dirty container.
Yeah, no, and this is one of my favorite. I did a lot of backpacking in my youth before my brain cancer and rock climbing, and we would go out to areas where there wasn't anything there in camp, and so we would need water purifiers. So this is one of my favorites, and I can't find my sleeve for it. Somebody took the sleeve because they wanted to actually go and order it. So, but this one is super cool because here, let's get up close and personal. This unit actually has a hose that comes off of it. Let me see if I can get it out. So you can buy, this little water filtration. This is also for backpacking through third world countries, so that you can, be out in nature and get water. But this guy goes into the water, right? And then you can actually suck on this guy to get the water out and kind of, help to pump. This is the MSR backpacking, basically, thing. And then this unit, so I have a few of these because I bought extra filters. And then what the cool thing about this guy is that it comes with 2 different bags, and it'll say on the bag dirty and the other one is clean. And then you put the filter, right? The hose that comes with it, you connect it to the dirty bag, and then it gravity feeds through the filter that gets connected. So you can use this standalone or you can use it with bags, and then it gravity fills into the clean bag to make sure that you are not mixing, right, the dirty with the clean. So I really like this. And I mean, obviously it only does, I think it only does 2 liters. You can buy them kind of different sizes, but this one, the biggest one they had was 2 liters of water. So yeah, so you have to, so there's that.
2
But
liters is half a gallon.
yeah, and so the other thing too is that we have to really think about, and these are things that, you need to really think about right now, because it kind of is looking like we're kind of headed towards sustainability and taking care of water and food. They're limiting seed buying. In some states, there's massive lines for people trying to get food. A lot of the farms. So, we're kind of closer to you needing to figure out where your water is going to be coming from and how you're going to get that water, and concepts that at least start thinking in your mind so that you can start putting this stuff together before, you have a crisis, before lightning strikes. So it's kind of really important to kind of think about. So, I mean, what's the recommended, isn't 64, is it 64 ounces of water that are recommended to drink daily? I forgot what the actual
It's
calculation.
way too much that they tell you that you have to drink per day. Realistically, if you're drinking 1 liter to 2 liters, you're at least getting replacement hydration. But in reality, if you're drinking 8 liters of water, 2 gallons, you're flushing your system a whole lot throughout the day. But I think that that's overkill.
So, okay, so let's do the math. So the math is, if I have, a portable water system, so I go down and I get 5 gallons of dirty water or 2 gallons of dirty water, and I get them home, and then I do the gravity feed, right? And then I end up with 2 liters per bag. And I have 2 adults in my family, and I have 2 children. How much water am I going to have to collect and clean daily in order to make sure that everybody has adequate water?
If you're going to have each person drinking a half a gallon of water, you'll need 2 gallons per day. If you were to distill that water, that would take you about 6 hours in a 1 gallon distiller, 3 hours per gallon. But different distillers are manufactured differently. And if you have access to a solar distiller and can set something up outside that just continuously evaporates and takes off water, that would be the best of all worlds.
Yeah, so even if say your only option is to boil the dirty water, right? You want to make sure that you have a purifier on hand, because you definitely want to have the water purified even before you boil it. And you also want to be able to filter out all of the particles, the visible particles that may be actually floating in it, right? So you want to make sure you kind of just for security reasons. You want to have like a system where at least you're getting it cleaned. Distill, you don't have to worry about it. It's all it's not going to touch each other, and the distill is going to carry itself
Well, the
out.
difference between boiling and distilling is that boiling puts the water back into the same original pot, and the distiller has a takeoff so that you're actually taking the evaporated water off and collecting it in another location. So distilling water is definitely purifying it better than boiling, but in a pinch, the boiling water is going to kill all the bacteria and the microbes and allow you to drink something that's okay to drink. But yeah, even if you don't have a sand filter, just putting the water through a paper filter and taking out the suspended solids is a very good idea. Anything that can be dissolved in the water will go through the paper, but every different filtration that you carry out will take more of the bad things out of the water.
So there's yeah, so let me look here. Okay, so you got to source out the water where you have it. You should actually go down there and look at it, right? So that you know exactly what you may need in order to collect it. And get it home and filter off solids, and then, you know, process it in whatever way that you have to process it. I suggest you try to have as many ways to process it as possible. In a pinch, like you're down home, desperate, they have things like aqua tabs that the military and stuff use to just ensure that everything is, you know, the water may not look good, but the aqua tabs will go in there and kill just about anything for them to drink it out in, you know, the middle of nowhere, in the Amazon forest or in a sewage area or whatever kind of water that they need to drink. So, so, you know, look for aqua tabs. There's all kinds of distillers. I have a lot of links, you know, whether they're plug-in electrical distillers, non-electrical distillers. You might want to get yourself a solar oven so that you can boil water with electricity or without electricity, and you can cook food, right? Because that's going to be kind of important as well.
Ovens
Also,
are not as easy to use as conventional ovens.
yeah, no.
The things you have to make sure is that you have to have access to the sunlight direct to have the solar oven work. A lot of times there will be a aluminum or other sort of collector that focuses sunlight onto the device, and it's usually just a box with a plastic window on it. And it does take longer to cook things in a solar oven, so you have to make sure you get your dinner started early in the afternoon if you want to have it finished by the time it's dark.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have anything else to do and you're working on survival mode, that's really not, you know, and you have to make sure, like with the solar ovens, that you keep moving. There's an ideal point where the light has to go through the little hole into the back, and that's how you know you're getting full sun, and you can just look down in there. When Lenny and I were on land and I was there, we would do that. Whoever was walking by, you know, on the land as we were working would pay attention about every 20 minutes to a half hour just to make sure that that solar oven was perfectly lined up and it was getting as max sun as possible. And I think, I can't remember if I cooked the goose there on your land in the solar oven, or the sun oven is the one I love the best. It's American made. And it comes with all these accessories, and it even comes with accessories to dehydrate food. It's awesome. And I think we did like a 7-pound goose in it, in the solar oven, and it took 7 hours to cook all the way through.
Yeah, it maxed out somewhere between 325 and 350. You definitely did not have the solar oven to the point where we could get it up to 400.
Yeah. And you know, like if you have an apartment, or you know, you live in a place where you have a patio and it's south facing, you're perfectly lined up to put a solar oven right on your patio, and even a home distiller out there, right? And you could even, you know, set up your whole little patio and kind of like a
If you're
survival.
setting up a home distiller on your patio, you're probably using most of the patio space that you have available.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, so anyway, so let's see. So we've got all kinds of different filters, and I just wanted to kind of see what else that we had here. So I want to talk about like water. Let me just harvest. I just want to harvest this to share with Dr. Lenny so he can check it out. Let me see. Copy.
Can
Okay,
you
so
do a screen share?
oh, you know what? I probably could, couldn't I? Okay, so this is one of the things that I like the most. There's a whole bunch of videos, you know, like DIY videos that I found on YouTube about, you know, going out and finding water, you know, and how to get water and look for water, how to do harvesting of water. Let me see if I can go here to screen
Did you
share.
find anything on dousing of water? Because if people buy property and want to douse the property to
Yeah.
underground sources, it's a
Well, and
very
then
good way of knowing where to put the well.
yeah, exactly. And you know, if you get dowsing really well, you get really good at it, I can go out and I can determine what kind of water it is, you know, if it's usable water, because sometimes you can tap into non-usable water, especially more and more with fracking. You know, fracking is contaminating underground water, you know, all over the place. So let me get here. Let me do my little screen share here. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oop, there it is. All right. I want to screen share. Let's see. Okay,
If
there it
you're
is.
using fracked water, you probably have an emulsion because the fracking water is used to extract oil from the system. And so you don't get very good water out of fracked water. Okay,
Yeah.
your life straw.
Yeah, but look, it has a bag. I just thought, wow, that is, I mean, for $54, what a great deal. And it does 1 gallon of gravity fed filtration system through the Life Straw company.
I used to have a solar shower that looked somewhat like that, except it was a 2 gallon bag.
Well, and I like that it has all this straps and stuff so you can attach it on, like, you know, you're on your bike, you know, and you've got to go to your water source, and then you can just throw that on your back and come back. And not to scare people, but, you know, what if you take your water purification devices down to a waterway and people notice it? You may get attacked, you know what I mean? So it's better to like harvest the really bad water and then take it wherever you're going to take it to actually purify it and harvest. And that's why it's also important to walk waterways in your vicinity to see who uses them. Are there people there, you know, getting more away from the people to, you know, harvest your water or go and get your little life straw and get a drink for the day and then come back, because we have to be, especially if you have kids, you know, we have to be concerned about making sure and getting those kids, you know, as clean a water as possible, because children are just more susceptible, you know, to a lot of different things. So let me see if I can let me get out of here. So there was a whole thing, just try to get this done quick, but let me get in here. So there's like really cool YouTubes. I just wanted to, let me see if I can get this out. That's the boy dog who's moved in downstairs, who's trying to get Jen to come onto the patio. He's barking. He's like, "Yo, baby, are you up there?" All right. I really like this company. I did a lot of research on this company, and this company has water harvesting systems. It's rainharvest.com. They have from small to large, like if you have a commercial building, they have water harvesting containers and filters and every possible thing that you could need. So if you wanted to try to get your house set up now before things fall apart, they have every possible thing that you could actually, you know, need to make sure that that water is clean. You know, any kind of water harvesting from farming to home, to, you know, off your roof, off a commercial building. These people were amazing, actually. They have metal, like if you're not really hip on the plastic because of the BPA product, BPH product, you don't have to actually have it. They have water tanks that are steel, storm water, so you can outfit your house to make sure that all the water coming off your roof and all your buildings is going into these containers. Filters, pumps, filtration, you know, all kinds of different stuff. These people were awesome. And then there was, and under the water harvesting links, Berkey had a lot of amazing filters. Berkey is one of the top. I think they're kind of sold out on a lot of stuff right now. From I was talking to somebody that was trying to order some stuff from Berkey, and they said that pretty much everything has been sold out, that they can't get anything. So you probably could get rainwater, storm water harvesting for climate resistance. So you probably could get some of that because a lot of people haven't really thought about this yet. But as far as the home water and the takeout, you know, bug out, I think Berkey is kind of on the sold out side. So they have a lot of back orders, and who knows how long that'll take for people. So they're also, I have these really great links. Let me copy that are DIY, do-it-yourself links for building things in your yard for harvesting water. This guy, I did a whole bunch of research on this and found these links on people. Well, anyway, but this guy has rainwater harvesting, collect and store cleanest rainwater from your roof. So he has some ideas. So we have some stuff on that. So I have a lot of links to share. If I had a property, I would be growing food on it. I don't have a property. So I have two stages. I have the home stage with water purifiers. This is my bug out, you know, these are my bug outs. So I can put them in my pack, and if I have to drink out of God knows what out in the mountains or whatever else, I'm good to go, even with my other MSR. In the house, we have a water distiller plug-in electric. And then I also have a solar oven that I can put out to actually boil water after you try to filter out as much stuff as possible. But if I had a property right now, I would be preparing it to grow food, even a small house with a backyard. And my first course of action and money that I would spend would be on home water harvesting system and filters that are needed for the long haul. And I think people should be prepared, this is just my opinion, for at least 10 years. I think if you're going to, if the systems fall apart, the water system shuts down, your food supply shuts down, whatever else shuts down, we have to think about 10 years down the road, and how long is it going to take for people to start, number one, going back to doing these jobs, number two, getting these systems back up and going. And the other thing too we have to take in consideration is, what has all of the presidents been talking about? A lot of other people that have been talking about that's wrong with America, and even Matt Stein talked about this, was the infrastructure. Matt Stein, I think, had 7 things of major cataclysmic events, that could impact us to where we would need to know how to, make medicines and antibiotics. And one was, the system collapse, where your food systems collapse, the water systems collapse, the infrastructure. One was, nuclear war. One was EMP attacks. One was like an earthquake, a major earthquake. So in the book, you can read all about that. He has all kinds of survival stuff. But, if we're going to make the effort, we should really think about like how long that we may need to do this. And if you're going to grow food, you definitely need water harvesting, because if you're not getting water up through your tap or out the backyard, and you don't have a well with a hand pump on it, I mean, if the electrical grid goes down so much for your well, because it isn't going to pump anything, right? So you might want to think about like the long term about how to get that water. And where I live in the desert, it's a serious, serious, serious issue. And I mean, parts of the desert that are lived in, like in Nevada, like Las Vegas, those areas were uninhabitable until air conditioning came along. So how, how are you going to deal with water issues if the issues come along? How are you going to be able to help and take care of that?
When I was in Southern Oregon and living out on the land, anytime when it rained, I would get out my 5-gallon buckets. And if I knew rain was coming, I'd have them set in a place where as many 5-gallon buckets as I could have out there, I would be collecting rainwater in. And then as soon as the rain was over, I would consolidate them into as few buckets as possible and put them right through the distiller. And that way I could distill. Well, for almost 6 months, I had enough rainwater collected to distill until it came to like May, June when the rain slowed down. But once rainy season hits in Oregon, a light rain is called Oregon sunshine.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of, angles. And, we're not experts by any means. You need to become the expert. But we're trying to help you to think about a lot of things that you haven't thought about that maybe we've already sort of worked out. And it's interesting because I was talking to Dr. Lenny, he's down in Florida now, and where he's at. And he was already thinking about, here he was, living off the land and, doing all these things and food growing, and had like they were pulling water out of their creek. I don't think it's kind of a river, but an area to actually help farm their land through using.
It was a tributary to a river.
Yeah, so they were harvesting water out of the river using a turbine type system that was a kind
It
of
was
a
actually called a ram pump.
Yeah.
It ran without electricity because the flow of the water would spin it in a centrifugal form. And so as the pump would spin in the water that came up was pushed through a hose, and each rotation, more water got pushed through the hose. We were able to run hosing for about 2/3 of a mile and fill a 1,000-gallon tank with water from the river. Then when the tank was filled, we would put the water disbursement into a pond on the property and just let the water run into the pond until the tank needed to be filled again.
But that water could have been diverted for growing food, watering the animals. It could have been
Well, it
diverted
really
for,
was.
yeah.
It's exactly what it was doing. Was we put it in the 1,000-gallon tank, and we allowed for, that was how we watered everything. And so pretty much we would have to fill the tank from the pump once a week, maybe once every 4 or 5 days. But it was independent of the flow until the river got real low. When the river got real low, the pump would bottom out and it wouldn't spin. So we had to shut it down at that point.
So these are kind of things that Lenny and I have seen and done, and thinking about water and survival and how to utilize water to its maximum potential and efficiency. And I was talking to Lenny on the phone, and I said, hey, so it looks like the food supplies are going to start bottle heading, and things are going to be tough. And he's like, oh yeah, I've already been like walking the golf course and looked at all the water that's there and what I'm going to need in order to get that water. And he goes, oh, I see fish in there. So I'm not worried. I'll just, get in there and grab a fish and, throw it on a barbecue and just go for it. So it's interesting how people who lived off the grid, right, or grown their own food and, deal with things like water, that how our minds are different, a little bit different than everybody else. I mean, when we go out, the first thing we're looking at is the water, like we're out on a hike and we're looking at the water and what the water is doing and where's it going, where most people probably wouldn't even pay attention to that because it's just not on their radar. So when we have water coming up through our sink, we don't worry about these kinds of things, and we have to really start paying attention to these
Another
things.
thing to worry about if the water stops flowing through places is building yourself an outdoor outhouse.
Yeah.
Because if you can't flush your toilet, you definitely don't want to be using it.
Well, and that's I was talking to somebody that they were saying, well, I would just start, pooping in the tub. And I thought to myself, well, you can't live in human fecal matter. It's one thing to deal with animals who eat grass and herbs and things like that. You can use their compost to put in a garden, as long as it doesn't have a lot of urine in it, that actually, fortifies the ground. But when you start getting to that carnivore poop, humans, dogs, and other animals that actually, have carnivore poop, it becomes a contaminant that can cause a whole host of issues, right? Especially
There,
cholera.
there's a book out there called Humanure that describes how you can process human ore to be useful fertilizer, but it's a long time in coming. It's not as quick as composting at all.
Well, and that's one of the things that, on the land where you were at and I came, we turned it in buckets and we put, coffee, we got whatever was sustainable at that time. So whatever was usable from the city, we had coffee shells from the bean one time that we were adding on top of the poo-poo. We had ground coffee that had been used that we put
Well,
on the poo-poo.
we had
Sawdust.
worked out something with the neighborhood coffee merchants where we could go and pick up the grounds from what they sold on a
And the
regular
shells,
basis.
the
Not,
leftover
not the
shells.
shells necessarily. The shells came from the plant that was
Oh yeah.
the coffee, but the spent coffee itself from all the stuff that they put through the filters in that, they would bag up and throw out. And so we would go by and pick that stuff up from them at no charge, bring it out and either compost it or keep it in the bags. And we would fill a 5-gallon bucket with coffee, have that sitting next to the outhouse. And every time you did a number 2, you take a cup full of coffee and put it on, and that cut down on the smell immensely.
Yeah, and it helped it to dry up and break down. But so you can't poop where you're going to live and eat, right? So that's going to be a whole other problem. One of the things that we've done is that we have 5-gallon buckets, with lids from Home Depot. And then, we'll put that out on the patio and we'll, go number 2 in there only with no number 1 because it makes it easier to deal with. And as soon as I can get down and get a container of sawdust, or I can go down and dig out sand, from outside, and we can throw the sand on top every time we do a number 2 and leave, and has a lid. So when it gets full enough, I can take it outside and do a couple things with it. I can dig a deep hole, bury it in the hole and cover it over, right? Or those are kind of my choices right now, but I don't want it inside with me at all because it's a source of viral, bacterial, and disease agents. So you do not want human pucky inside where you're going to actually be thriving. And if you're outside, in your camp, you don't want it in your camp, and you want to make sure you have a shovel. If you have to bug out You want something to dig with, because you're going to want to dig a hole, and you're going to want to do your deal in the hole and cover that hole up, because you don't want to actually expose in your environment.
Yeah, I kept a trowel in my backpack for about 3 years, and it was one of the more useful things in the preparation that I had. At this point, I'm not prepared for outdoor living. I live in a apartment complex, but when I was out in Southern Oregon living off the land, there were definitely things that could be done to make life easier, and always packing a trowel was definitely something that made life easier.
And if we're out, out and about, we don't want to poop too close to the water, especially the water we're harvesting, and we don't want to poop in the water, and we want to leave a lot of that stuff out, just to make sure. So what would you do? Just kind of ask you a question. So with what you're at and what you have to work with, how would you deal with your poop as it stands now? Say tomorrow the toilet stopped running. How would you deal with it now?
If that were to happen to all the places here, my guess is that the golf course would become a place that's a burial ground for other people's poop, that we would dig some holes in the golf course that were big enough that multiple people could use them. When it got to a certain fill point, we would cover it over with sawdust, organic matter, and then a layer of dirt, and let it go and find another place there by the golf course. We'd also probably turn the golf course into a major league big garden and have the poop areas be somewhere isolated. But there's 18 different holes on this golf course. And in scoping it, if I were to do major scale agriculture on the golf course, I think I could pull that off, but only if it was permissible. And in the climate that we're in right now, there's no way it would be permitted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just
I
things
see
to
we're
think
running up
about.
to the end of the hour.
We are.
What
So,
else you want to talk about?
well, I think that pretty much covers it. Basics of water: don't poop in the water, don't keep the poop inside. Be careful what you do with your human poop. Ideas on
Use a
how.
use a filter, and anytime you can. And the degree of filtration depends on the degree of how bad the water is. But do not drink nasty water.
Well, you can't even, all water is going to have some kind of bacteria in it. It's going to be unsafe. I mean, there's giardia in almost every body of water. The other thing too is that you have to think about, like here in Nevada, we have, because of all the mining that went on, all of our waterways have the 2 type of mercury in them. And so you have to be careful, like if you're going down way to the bottom and you're scooping and you're moving a lot of that dirt, you could be getting yourself some mercury contamination also in that water. It's always good to kind of stay on the top, but that's also another thing to think about. And I was reading about 5 years ago that they've tested for mercury contaminants, and 628 rivers have tested positive, to where they don't even recommend you eating the fish out of them.
Yeah, you want to be sure that the water you're using is flowing. The faster the water flows, the better, the more better it would be. And Victor Schauberger, one of the people we've talked about in the past, used to use design flow forms for water purification for cities and towns. So if you found that this was going to be a long-term thing, I would definitely look up Schauberger's flow forms and get it so that you could run water from uphill downhill. And the bigger the vertical drop between the uphill and the downhill, the more aeration the water gets. So you can make it so that you're using better water to start off and make your life easier, as opposed to going to a stagnant pool and expecting to use water from there.
Good ideas. So just get out and start paying attention. We're going to be May 10th. Dr. Lenny and I are going to come back and we're going to do advanced water class. And that's going to be on Emoto, Schallenberger, Polak. We're going to bring in a whole bunch of amazing, brilliant people that both of us have studied and screen share some of their work and talk about some of their work. So, but we wanted to help people so that they could start getting their minds wrapped around what's going on. Please look at the free PDF that we're going to be putting out as a link to When Technology Fails. It's 500 pages of everything that you could possibly ever want to know about surviving in your house, in your car, or if you're out in the bush. So please, please, please take a look at that. And, you know, we just got to get prepared. The more prepared we are individually, then the more we can work together when we need to start bringing the system back up, and things like taking over the golf course, right? Taking over those areas so that we can actually take care of our communities.
And it's better to have the knowledge and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Yeah.
So well worth taking time to just survey the situation and look at the what ifs and imagine that the what ifs won't happen, but be prepared if you need them.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening. And we're at the end of this class. So next week, I'm going to be doing my own class on recapitulating, actually, so we can power up our systems and start healing our past so that we can actually start being in the present moment and moving forward towards what we need to prepare for. So
have a happy Easter, folks.
Oh yeah, that's right. Happy Easter. Bye everybody. Thank you.